Yes, you read that title correctly. This video is about nicknames, not names. This isn't about name meanings. It could be, but not only is one of the main name meanings that interests me totally from before the story had a narrative, but I don't think that Scott Cawthon was thinking about name meanings. I think he has a hat of white names, and he picks and draws at random. We were so naive once. We complained that there were 3 Jeremys. We didn't even know back then. No, this video is about nicknames. What they mean, why characters use them, and when, and what they tell us about the characters. I am so sorry if you thought this channel was going to be about theories, because now it's just about narrative analyses, I think. This was, like all my recent videos, inspired by the FNaF 2 movie. Unfortunately. Honestly, it mostly inspired me because of what it didn't do with nicknames, which sucks because most of the characters in the movies have interesting stories around nicknames in the games. I'll be talking about different aspects of the novels, games, and movies, which is to say, expect spoilers for the new movies, all of the books, and, well, not all of the games, most of the games, whatever. Part 1. Charlie Emily. Charlie was what inspired the concept of this video in the first place. Charlie is, of course, never given a name in the games. This is likely due to the fact that she was retroactively added as the puppet in the games to connect them with the books. Don't fight me on this. Charlie is a nickname, notably a masculine or at least gender-neutral one. Charlie mentions that only her dad calls her Charlotte. She rejects the name outright several times. Throughout the novel trilogy, Henry remains the biggest threat to Charlie's autonomy despite the fact that he never actually appears in the story. Beyond being the only one who refuses to refer to her as Charlie, Henry literally created her in his image. When Elizabeth is busy projecting her daddy issues onto Charlie, she explains that the 4th Charlie bot was intended to be the perfect, grown-up version of Charlie. Someone noticeably more feminine, less socially awkward, and less fixated on unconventional hobbies. The 4th Charlie is a perfect one. She is exactly the kind of person that Henry wanted Charlie to be. As much as we call them the Charlie bots, Henry didn't intend to call them by that name. The only other person who refers to each robot as Charlotte is Elizabeth, who is meant to embody the ideal Charlotte. Elizabeth doesn't even use the name Charlotte regularly, only when reducing the Charlie bots to the images Henry made them in. There is Charlotte, Henry's perfect feminine deceased little girl, and there is Charlie, an awkward masculine adult without a clear image of who she wants to be. It's impossible to know whether or not the original Charlie would have gone by Charlotte. She was 3, 2, or 5, depending on the book, and the only person we hear about her is from Henry, who doesn't call her Charlie. But we do know that Henry made the Charlie bots. He made them with his image of Charlie, a little girl who doesn't exist and goes by Charlotte. I'm fully aware that Elizabeth claims the 3rd Charlie bot, the Charlie we followed throughout the trilogy, isn't the real Charlie. Elizabeth is referring to the fact that Charlie doesn't contain the ghost of her dead counterpart. She's an artificial creation based on her father's image of her. That being said, Charlie isn't who her father wants her to be. John is disturbed by Elizabeth, who exemplifies the young woman Henry always imagined Charlie would become. There's kind of a sense of queer horror, something that I think was unintended, to the fact that John is dating someone masculine and oblivious, or for that partner to be replaced by somebody feminine and flirty, something everybody attributes to growing up, because masculinity is something girls are assumed to grow out of. Charlie is a person in her own right. She contains all the memories of the original Charlie and grew up on those terms, not Henry's. The original Charlie likely would have grown up to use the nickname too. Elizabeth is wrong when she says Charlie isn't real. She's just using that as an excuse because she needs a reason why she deserves what Charlie has. And Elizabeth has faced constant dehumanization and has been reduced to her father's lackey. She's projecting. So, I don't think changing the movie equivalent of Charlie to Charlotte effectively separates the Charlie bot from the original Charlie. After all, personalities have changed across continuities before. Golden Freddy is a minor antagonist in the games, but entirely peaceful in the books. William's fake identity in the books is slimy and disconcerting. In the movies, it's more charismatic, if a little bit odd. Elizabeth's manipulation tactics vary from a false maturity to a feigned childlike innocence. When William grows more confident as a decaying rabbit in the games, he quickly grows repulsed by the form in the books, and so on and so forth. Charlie from the books had a friend group, unlike Charlie in the movies, but novel Charlie was still a very awkward person and struggled with communication. She just found other people who also loved Freddy's and her dad's creations that made her so happy. Both Charlies are also snarky little shits, if that helps. There's no functional reason for Charlie to be called Charlotte in the movies. If anything, it makes her less interesting. Everyone calls her Charlotte in the movies. Vanessa, Michael, Henry, Mike, you get the idea. We don't know how old she is in the movie, just that her actress is 13 and the actress who played a younger Vanessa is 11, making her probably in her late tweens, early teens. Still, Henry's solution to put Charlie to sleep is something from when she was a baby, and Henry never gets off his ass to help his daughter himself. He just puts her to sleep, out of the way, trapping her. Henry refuses to let Charlie go. He continues to refer to her as his little girl, even though he gave her a means to grow up. He refuses to use her preferred name, and this all creates the picture that Henry desires to infantilize Charlie, to have a sweet little girl who lifts others up in her arms. That girl's name is Charlotte, not Charlie. Juxtaposing Henry's passive or pacified, considering his use of the music box, infantile version of Charlotte with the very real, flawed Charlie would have worked perfectly with the second movie's themes of parental control. William uses Vanessa's position as his child, a role that feels particularly infantilizing due to the word choice, as a means to control her. She is his favorite and he cares about her, something obviously juxtaposed by him taking a knife out and chasing her. This theme could be reflected in Charlie, connecting our protagonist to our antagonist. Henry isn't William. He isn't a serial killer. But he could represent the classic sort of parent anyone could relate to, a father who just wants a little girl who doesn't exist. Instead, Charlie is given the name she rejects, something unflinchingly upheld by everyone, even her childhood best friend. Charlie is Charlotte, Henry's little girl that will someday grow up to be a perfect young woman. And the part of her that resisted that, despite the fact that she was literally made in her father's image, goes unnoticed. Charlie shouldn't be a nickname exclusive to the Charlie bots. Doing so would be relenting to the idea that Charlie is exactly who Henry wants her to be. It attributes her personality in the books to problems in her father's mental state when he made her, something contradicted by the fact that Charlie uses a nickname in spite of Henry. Elizabeth is wrong. Charlie is real. What makes her so fascinating isn't that she's original life, it's that she is the original Charlie, even if she doesn't literally contain that Charlie's soul. In the books, remnant is memory, signs of something once existed, even if it's gone. And this is repeatedly stated to not be something exclusive to ghosts. The Charlie bots, other than the fourth one, are not haunted by ghosts. They are haunted by memory. Her name is Charlie, not Charlotte, and refusing to acknowledge that makes her a less compelling character. Instead of someone confined by her father's image, she is exactly what he says she is, despite the fact that Henry, of all people, has never been shown to be a reliable narrator. Character encyclopedia be damned. Her nickname is central to her identity, her autonomy, to what makes her a unique and interesting person. I don't think the movie understands. Taking a character's nickname away can take away part of their identity. Part 2. Mike Afton. I should probably confess, this video is secret propaganda for people to use the characters' nicknames again, if that wasn't, clear from the start. The nickname Mike is actually used in the games far more than the name Michael, but that doesn't really matter anymore since FNaF has a big problem with names. A big problem. Anyway, we see the name Mike repeated consistently during private occasions, the Ticket to Fun book, the survival logbook, hand unit, that sort of thing. Some contexts, like the Ticket to Fun book and the FNaF 1 check, imply that Mike Schmidt is just a fake name. But it's the fact that his nickname continues in private settings that gets my attention. Because Sister Location and the survival logbook don't involve fake identities. This is just Mike Afton. I want to focus on the survival logbook for this video specifically. Mike's using this thing as a diary. He communicates with the spirits in the books a couple of times, but it does seem like he's mostly speaking to himself. He tells a lot of dumb jokes, including one that may or may not offend a member of his audience. He doodles fantasies about Freddy Fazbear's eventual defeat. He draws a bunch of little hearts. Mike expresses a lot of distaste for Freddy's, the animatronics, the company, its reputation. And while that makes perfect sense, it's interesting. Because Mike is still working there. He did work there, and he will continue to work there. A lot of people assume the logbooks takes place during FNaF 3, both to correlate with Happiest Day and because Foxy is the night guard in the book, and he's in the FNaF 3 office. And the animatronics don't seem to be around, so they'd have a reason to communicate like this through a book instead. Mike's worked at Fazbear for several games by now, and he's going to move on to another one after this. But it's when he talks about escaping, about getting rich and locking up Freddy and moving to a tropical island that he goes by Mike. It's when he's telling his father that he tried to do exactly what he asked of him when he goes by Michael. Although a lot more subtly than Charlie, Mike experiences the same duality. There's the honor-bound, guilty Michael and the carefree and sarcastic Mike. The main problem I have is simple. Complex characters are meant to show off the multiple facets of a person, the duality of one person. You erase that duality if, for example, instead of one multifaceted character, you decide that multiple single-faceted characters are cooler. It's a good thing they never do that. Instead of getting to see a character's experience with their name, we see multiple characters with the same name, but one uses a nickname. Still, I think there's potential here. My hopes are just not very high. At best, if I'm being generous, the movies juxtapose the supposed professionalism as a full name as opposed to the unprofessionalism as of a nickname. William refers to Mike Schmidt by his full names a couple of times in the first movie. But if I'm being honest, I think it's just to be dramatic, or the first time because he's reading the name off of paper. We don't know how Mike feels about his name or why it matters. It's just the only option if they want to avoid confusing the hell out of us. Similarly, Michael Afton can't go by Mike, unless we want the movies to stop making sense. Lisa references a security guard named Mike, but I think that was just for the bait and switch. Michael does immediately act repulsed by the nickname and quickly corrects them, and that's really fucking funny. I think there could be something here, not what I would have done, but there's something. Once again, we see a Mike who wants to be free from Freddy's, and all the tragedies it brings, compared to a Michael who is completely honor-bound to the company because of these tragedies. The battle is external instead of internal. And it's not really a battle either. The character work in the games is subtle and frankly pretty mediocre, but my expectations for a movie are higher. I feel like it comes with the medium. We see these two warring sides interact once and barely talk to each other at all. I'm sure they will in the next movie, but once again, what does it have to say about your writing if people need to use cellular division to prove it's good? In the games, Mike's connection to his father is connected to his name. He is Michael to his father and Mike to himself, just like Charlie is Charlotte to her father and Charlie to herself. The movies automatically lose this element because Mike uses a nickname just because. I'm sure Michael's usage of his full first name could be connected to his dad, but Mike? That's just his name. William only calls him Michael when he's using his full name, Michael Schmidt. I don't think he ever calls him Michael directly, just by the first name. Once when he's literally reading a paper, and again when he's being dramatic and telling Mike that he's gonna die. Henry exclusively calls him Mike, which is weird to me. I know it was so that the movie could make sense, but that man isn't on nickname basis with anyone. Henry is the kind of guy to just guess your full name if you don't use it when you introduce yourself. The thing is, you can't have characters switch between their names and nicknames depending on the context when someone else has the same name. Scott shot himself in the foot, and I feel like he does that a lot. Part 3. Ness A. Steel Wool can actually write characters. Unfortunately, Ness was introduced when Scott was backseat game developing, and there was what seems to be some sort of extreme development hell. I didn't look much into it. But Ness, in both a massive amount of deleted content and canon content, has about as on-the-nose nickname symbolism as you can get. Regardless of whether or not you believe Ness is an Afton, Glitchtrap seems to want her to become one. It doesn't matter which one for the purpose of this video. Ness is really only referred to her by her full name in a formal setting. Animatronics, work stuff, you get the idea. Granted, the nickname Ness comes from scrapped emails in FNaF AR, but because so much of Vanessa is cut content, this section will go over that. Maybe it's not canon, but that's okay with me. Ness's casual username or email or whatever is Nessie97. Her work email is VA, which is completely devoid of identity. Rather than a cute nickname and presumably what is a birthday or birth year, it's just her initials. And I think Nessie is a cute nickname. It fits really well with what we learn about Ness in these emails. She likes pink and rainbow hair extensions and making cupcakes. Lewis, who is basically a vessel for Ness exposition, remarks on how Ness is a bright, cheerful person, but has recently been isolated, sad, and frankly, kind of creepy. Assuming this is a possession-related thing. Lewis also refers to Vanessa as Ness entirely. He remarks that while they aren't super close, he wants to make sure she's okay and maybe to get to know her better. This gives me the impression that she primarily did go by Ness before her possession. She and Lewis seem like they were work acquaintances, and he exclusively calls her that. I do think it's funny to tell Ness's story through a guy who's like, hey, I know we're not super close, but you're Googling about murder on company time. That's scary. Anyway, we have Ness. And of course we have Vanny. I'm just going to, put the evidence for Vanny being Vanessa on the screen since I know it's widely accepted and it's not the point of this video, but I feel bad treating most things as established canon, especially considering some of my own, controversial theories. This time, the duality isn't metaphorical. Lewis points it out explicitly, and we know Ness is literally being mind-controlled. There's Ness, and there is Vanny. Ness, who is bright and cheery but lightly dealing with deeper issues. And Vanny, painfully obedient, overeager, and cruel. Like in the previous sections, the expectations of being Vanny instead of Ness is slowly making Ness's mental health worse. Her own identity is slowly being erased, and she's powerless to stop it. Interestingly, Vanny is also a nickname. Obviously, on the surface level, it's a combination of Vanessa and Bunny. But I also think Ness doesn't require the same conflict with her full name that the other characters I mentioned do. We don't know what Ness's childhood was like. A therapist mentions that in her files, Ness has an abusive dad named Bill who forced her to lie in court so that he could get full custody of her, presumably leading to her mother's death, although it isn't said. But we don't know this to be true. It seems like Glitchtrap can alter files, and this backstory is suspiciously similar to the Aftons, right down to the name Bill. So it could be another attempt to turn Ness into a proper recreation of an Afton child. Ness doesn't even confirm this story. She just said she was supposed to be a good girl. Which is to say, we don't know what Ness's connection to her name is. Mike and Charlie's conflict both connect with their fathers, the people who presumably gave them their names. A name and identity is given to them, even though they desire a different one. But we don't know who Ness's parents are. So instead of struggling with a birth name forced onto her by a parent, a different nickname is forced onto her by a surrogate parent later in her life. Vanny. She wants to chill out and hang, but there's literally a voice in her ear begging her to go become Bunny. Which is kind of what happens in the movies. It's pretty simple. Vanessa wants to be normal and silly, but the yellow rabbit would really like her to start stabbing. But she's exclusively referred to as Vanessa, barring titles which aren't really the focus of this video. And I just think it would have been fun to juxtapose Ness or Nessie with Vanny. Vanessa's found family members go by nicknames, assuming Abby is a nickname and not her full name. When does she get one? And yes, I am fully aware that Ness is the name of the MatPat waiter. I just don't care. I don't think it's ever even mentioned in the movie. And when people talk about Ness the waiter, I actually assume they're talking about Vanessa by default. This is what Scott Cawthon gets for only knowing 5 names, lest we forget what the Theory Wiki refers to as the infamous Jeremys. Or they could have called her Nessa or Nessie instead, if suddenly reusing names is such a big problem. I think emphasis on what Vanessa wants to be called in comparison to what William does call her could add to the movie's discussions of autonomy, or like the way it teases us, and by us I mean me, with discussions of autonomy and then does nothing with them. I genuinely don't mean to be bitter about the new movie in this one. In fact, I love dissecting the information we do have, if that wasn't obvious. Character studies are fun. But I also think we had so many opportunities for complexity that were denied again and again in favor of cramming in more information. It's the little details, in my opinion, that are the most interesting. The things that subtly provide us with the good character work we seem to be lacking. Part 4. Conclusion. If it wasn't super obvious by my last video, I'm obsessed with how FNaF explores autonomy. Or the lack thereof, really. We meet 3 major players throughout the games, Henry, William, and Edwin. Pretty much every other character was placed into their respective positions because of Henry, William, or Edwin. None of them have their own agency, and I think that's fascinating. I didn't expect my last video to get any engagement at all, so I'm very flattered that so many people want to hear me talk about the sort of details that just grab my attention, even if it's just to hate watch because you don't believe that Michael is the vengeful spirit. I don't really care. I don't think FNaF has good writing in all cases, except for like maybe the newest games. Secret of the Mimic clearly had actual writers, and I think they did pretty good. But I think there's so much potential, particularly around the different ways characters present and view themselves. Nickname symbolism is like, instead of where the characters have like an angel and devil on their shoulders, they have like either an angel or a devil depending on the character, and then on the other shoulder it's just some guy. This video is also propaganda for you to stop calling her Charlotte, as I said earlier. Her name is Charlie. I will not take criticism on this. I will take criticism on several things. This is not one of them. I will forgive the other 2 for the sake of clarity. But this one is Charlie. There are no other Charlies. You don't have an excuse. In conclusion, FNaF would be so good if it was good.